hopefully we are live.
I mean, it says on my screen we're live, so hopefully we're good.
Yeah, it's come off on my phone now, so yeah, I believe we are live. So, hey Craig, hey Jackie, hey Amna, hey Aaron, hey
Evening,
Greg,
everyone.
hey Susan, hey Philip. Hopefully that's everyone that's in chat at the moment. Some more will be along soon, I am sure. But tonight we are joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Adam Button. Adam has been on one of my streams before, probably good, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was over a year ago, so
Yeah, it
it's
must be.
been a little while.
Hey, John. Hey, Rosanna. So, hey, Emma. And so, well, since then, perhaps a few people in chat that watching that perhaps didn't see that stream, so don't know who you are. So, do you want to give yourself a sort of quick introduction into basically, who you are and what you do?
So hi everyone. I'm Adam. So I'm an invert enthusiast. So like Phil, we've got a common interest there with all the crazy world of bugs and invertebrates and everything. Absolutely amazing. I'm fortunate enough to work up at the Highland Wildlife Park up in Scotland, part of the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. And I work on the field conservation team, working on our conservation breeding programs with invertebrates. So I've focused down quite heavily into native species of invertebrates and working on breeding and release programs and conservation work through our field research.
That's about it. Hey, James. Hey, Louise. So that's man, that's stuff and that. Hey, Scott. Sometimes, we're both zookeepers. Everyone
Hey guys.
watching me knows I'm a zookeeper and stuff. And I think people kind of hopefully realise that zoos are here for conservation purposes and that we try and work to conservation of things like tigers or elephants, red pandas, this or the other. Yeah. Often, even sometimes in that, in the world, don't realise that zoos work with invertebrates and so and work to conserve invertebrates as well. And that's something that you've been quite involved with for some time.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you say, when people think of conservation work done by zoos and animal collections, quite often it is those big flagship species that we think of. But yeah, the work that's being done with the invertebrates in zoos all over the country and all over the world is incredible work. And what we can actually do with invertebrates in this sort of setting is immense. Because, like, compared to a lot of the bigger mammals, you can do so much more with less space and less funding and completely change the outlook of a species, which is like when you can think about it, like thinking the work that you're doing is actually changing that entire species outlook is absolutely insane.
That's it. And as well as often the work that we sometimes do with invertebrates is often so much behind the scenes, not really seen by the public, working perhaps with even like some species that just don't do well being displayed and stuff because they hide up or they're tiny or they're only maybe adult for a few months or whatever. And so it's kind of done in rooms around the back, behind the scenes that no one sees. And even sometimes we're guilty ourselves sometimes of not necessarily putting that information out there to the wider public. Of, actually, look at what we're doing. And the thing.
Well, that's the thing, they're not as often as romantic and picturesque as a lot of the bigger mammals and such. But yeah, the work that's being done is absolutely incredible. I mean, sometimes you're working with, in the past, worked with species where you've got 50% of the population, like globally, and it's completely extinct in the wild. And being able to work on something like that is just absolutely incredible. And yeah, knowing that work is having such a significant impact.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. That a zoo can have half of the whole world's population of an animal.
Yeah, and the work that was done by those few conservationists to bring those species in just before the species went extinct in the wild has then meant that species has been saved and then has now started to be released in some cases.
Yeah, again, often either doesn't get reported that much, or again, sort of mainstream media kind of yawns at that sort of stuff. And stuff with it, and stuff because they're not seen as big glamorous sort of animals. These sort of animals We're talking about things like the parchless snails, which are
Yeah.
tiny little snails and stuff. And
We had even tiny little brown and white snails, which say
you
even
go
people.
to a zoo with parchless snails, and sometimes there's just a little tiny sign next to the tank that will say, "This is half of the world's population."
Yeah.
In this tank of 20 snails, 50 snails, this is half of all the ones that are in the world.
Yeah, and just being able to understand,
just to compute that's how endangered these are, and that that's something that zoos are working with, and stuff, and then the sort of the ramifications about how how difficult it can be to work with something like that.
Well, especially as quite often you start with virtually no data, and you're like, okay, right, I've got this species, it's on the brink of going extinct or having major issues. We know this much on a page. Go. Like the understanding in it is so reduced compared to like if you've got other big cats, you've often got stuff that you can at least partially translate onto that and get a basis going. But with a lot of our stuff, it's like, right, okay, this has not been kept in captivity at all before. We've not had anything similar. What can we learn? But that's also the exciting part of it, because actually you're working out and seeing behavior that you've never seen before, which is just amazing.
Yeah, everything that you're doing is a world first that no one's ever done.
When you see them doing things, you're like, what?
Yeah, in the sort of the private hobby and stuff, we get a new species. Often someone's kept it before. Yeah. We can, there's, various bits of research done in it. There's breeding reports. There's this, that, and the other. Or, actually, they're very similar to this species. So, it's relatively easy to work out what to do when you get a new species. But when you're getting literally a species that's never been kept by anyone, there's no information on captive care.
Yeah.
All you got is some wild data, kind of thing. That's completely different ballgame. And you can't just say, well, if it's a snail, well, we can keep them like giant African mouse cells and they'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. You've got those intricacies to think of. But then also, if you're looking at really endangered species, what often you're finding them in those habitats that you think that you label as ideal might not actually be ideal. That's just the last place they're clinging on. So their ideal habitat could be another area, but has just been completely destroyed by invasive species or building work or something like that. So it's trying to focus down, okay, this is where we're finding them, this is what they're doing, but is that ideal for them? But knowing that when you've only got a handful of animals to work with is so tricky.
I could only imagine.
Well, even talking to like people that are working that have like where we've got all these invertebrates in captivity for exotic purposes and pets, it's all started somewhere. Those species were initially brought in and they had to work out what they're feeding on and all that. It's just slowly building up that data pack. It's just massively useful data. Like even now, drawing data from private people that hold them and things like that, you can get some really useful information from it.
Absolutely. I mean, and certainly with, we know that quite well within sort of the LVI side of things, so low vertebrate and invertebrate side of things within zoos, that the private sector and zoo sector are that bit closer, kind of with each other, because there is that overlap. There is private enthusiasts that, perhaps want to specialize in certain genuses or even species and stuff, and are really kind of working with those sometimes in just a private setting, even for conservation reasons and for native species conservation reasons as well, along with with license in Natural England and stuff to work with certain species, things like the Fenland raft spider is a great example of Helen Stewart basically running that project from her kitchen. Stuff, and
it's the way a lot of things have been done in the past. It's just groups of enthusiasts, particularly for, as you say, for invertebrates, because in theory you can rear them in a kitchen, and people done incredible work doing that. But now it's nice to be. I'm very fortunate with where I am here that we've got designated facilities for it. We're sort of moving up to go, okay, right, we want structured plans for all of these and recording everything. It's all the stuff that we dream of, like slowly building up. But Fenland raft spider, then you've got wonderful work done with the tansy beetles and all that sort of thing, that like a lot of that has been built up just through dedicated people.
No, Absolutely. So when it comes to sort of, what are the species that you sort of used to work? Because you used to work with more exotic stuff, and now you've transitioned to native. So what was some of the sort of exotic stuff that you worked with?
So I'm now focusing on the natives, but as you say, but I used to work quite a lot with various beetle species. So the giant Ugandan flower beetles. I've got a bit of a soft spot for the beetles. Like still do keep some, and yeah, they're absolutely awesome beetles. The Udicellas and that sort of thing. But I was fortunate enough to work with the Partula, so with the endangered snails, the Desertas wolf spiders, Lord Howe Island stick insects. I think there's about 80 species of different invertebrate we had. So I was fortunate to like even aquatic stuff. So corals, marine invertebrates, right through to various different tarantula species, butterflies, which was absolutely brilliant. I'd not worked with butterflies before and they were absolutely brilliant. Just getting to walk into a butterfly house and see all these amazing animals flying around. It was just amazing. So I am very fortunate I've been able to work with such a nice range. Lots of cockroaches and ants. Ants love causing you shenanigans.
Oh, absolutely.
Any day it was like, okay, how's today gone? Actually, the ants did something. Of course, the ants did something.
Beef butters.
Yeah. Oh, we want to move into that next display. Okay, cool. You like that display more, do you? Okay, fine. We'll work on this in a minute, but give me a second. You're not feeding us fast enough.
The amount of times you walk into your house and find some leaf cutters in a 6 second enclosure, just shredding all the brown fluffy, like, oh, and the 6 seconds just looking on like, oh, my food's gone.
Yep, you guys didn't feed us fast enough, so we're going to go get it ourselves.
Yep.
It's like, right, okay. I mean, I love the ingenuity of them, but they always cause shenanigans. I do miss working with ants. It's quite amazing up here. Like my first trip up here, getting to see the giant wood ant nests.
Yep. Nice.
And then like just seeing them just coming alive and just with the ants all whizzing over them and then running your hand over and you're just getting little bits of spray and you can smell the vinegar. It's just like, oh, you're so cool. But then if you accidentally tread in one, not so much fun.
No, definitely not so much fun. I can imagine if you tread on a wood ant nest. Hey, Steve, hey, Joff.
Hi, guys.
I can absolutely imagine. Craziest part for the Invert Shows UK shows, he believes that the Fen Ross Spider Conservation is this year's chosen charity for their raffles.
That's amazing.
Which is cool. So yeah, the Invert Shows UK shows hold a raffle at every show, and every year they choose like a charity where the proceeds of that raffle are going to go to. And it's always like an invert-based charity, which is absolutely fantastic. That's a very, very worthy cause to be supported.
I always remember my previous colleagues talking about the Fen Raft spiders, and like they would just be like almost teleporting, just like whee, and just babies off. It's like, okay, right, just disappear off somewhere. Just like, right, okay, I've got to find you now. Like super fast. They remind me a lot of like pokies and such, where they're just like teleport speed.
Well, John, about that reminds me of the story you said about when you were working with Pokey Metallica.
Yeah.
And it was part of a program for him, and you had that really, really brave male.
Yeah, he was slightly confident. He was there. He was doing everything he should have done. He was drumming away, being such a good little man. But she was definitely in the mood, but she couldn't quite figure out how to get out of her tunnel, despite being in that enclosure for a very long time. So he, I think, got a bit frustrated eventually. So he went in there with her, and me and my boss at the time were both like, "Oh no, he's going to get eaten." But he went in there, did his thing with her, went back out, went back in his tank, and was like, "Yep, done." And we were there like gobsmacked. He just went in, was just like, "Yep, sorted." It was like, right, okay. He was a good boy. He did very, very well. I think he mated 6 or 7 times in the end, so he did very well.
He done well.
Even when he was getting a little bit older, he did fall on one of the females, but then she turned around, did a little wiggle, and was like, "Yep, cool." And we're like, "Good job falling on you is a way to your heart, because otherwise he was gonna get eaten."
And that's it. And that's something that probably a lot of people wouldn't think of from a pokey, or being able just to do that. Fall on didn't even fall on a female, and was like, yeah, okay, I'll make with you.
Yeah, no, he just lost his footing when he was going down, and was just like, cool. There was nothing we could have done if she decided he wasn't going to be the one for her, but she was just like, yep, that wooed me enough. I do love it. It's just so weird.
So actually, oh, cheers, Craig. Craig has just just gifted a channel membership, which has gone to Jackie. Ah, fantastic!
Congratulations,
cheers,
Jackie.
And also, Jackie's been a member for a month, I believe, which is awesome.
Amazing.
So you don't know, but obviously now, you move from there and you've gone and now work with native invertebrates, and that's something that sometimes we don't hear, or sometimes a lot about. Sometimes we're keeping exotics and stuff. I've done it myself. We've got into exotic inverts and kind of forgot about natives and stuff, and then over the years I've gone more back interested in native inverts again, and just actually how amazing a lot of our native inverts are.
Yeah.
We have an absolutely huge beetle, the stag beetle. Like, can you get a more awesome stag beetle than our own stag beetle? Probably not.
No, when you're looking at some of the species, like even just things that you see fairly regularly, things like your dragonflies, and actually look at the intricacies of them and the wings, looking at their eyes, and it's just like you kind of have to pinch yourself and go, actually, these amazing creatures are here anyway.
Dragonflies are like the most successful predator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when we were at the Invert conference down in at Whipsnade, and we were going out and doing the native species walk, and a couple of guys were recording a butterfly flying. Dragonfly flew past, grabbed the butterfly and flew off. It was just like, okay, an amazing behaviour to see. You also felt bad for the butterfly, but just seeing the efficiency that it went, picked it out and went.
Yeah, and it's really because they kind of predict where the prey is going to go, so they don't really chase the prey. They just go, oh, it's there, it's going to go there. I'm going to go there and get it.
Yeah, they're absolutely insane.
Sort of thing. So with native, what native species are you currently working with?
So the primary one for me at the moment, along with my colleague Carl, is our pine hoverflies. So the program's been going with RZSS for the last 5 years. Started down at Edinburgh and then has moved up to the Highland Wildlife Park because the last remaining site for pine hoverfly is not far from us up here in the Highlands. So it's a really local program for us. And they're an absolutely amazing species. So a little bit about the hoverflies. So they're the pine hoverfly. They're only found in one location up here, and then they're also found in parts of Northern Europe. But the population is incredibly small, particularly up here. Until last year, an adult pine hoverfly had not been seen in the wild for nearly a decade. So incredibly endangered species. Been finding handfuls of larvae, but not many at all. So actually seeing the adults was virtually unheard of. So population has been surveyed for the last few years at their last remaining site. When 1 year they didn't find that many, so they decided to take a group of them into captivity or into our project here at RZSS in order to try and breed them. So it started off with our carnivore team, actually took up the mantle and successfully reared them through those first few years. And now we've got a designated team of myself and then Carl who work on the hoverflies full time, along with our other team members giving us assistance as well. So the pine hoverflies are a really cool hoverfly species. So the adults themselves are black in colour with a little orange tip to their abdomen. The boys have 2 full bands of orange. The girls just look like the little tip's just been dabbed in a little bit of paint. So it's very fades to the tip, which is really adorable. The coolest bit about them, though, is their larvae, actually. So they overwinter as larvae, but the larvae feed in rot holes in Scots pine trees. So where these big Scots pine trees break off or limbs will fall off or they die, the wells in those fill with water. The female hoverflies lay their eggs in there. They hatch out, and then the larvae live underwater, feeding on bacteria that creates as it all ferments. They've got a little mustache, which is adorable. They use to help filter out the food that's in there. And they've got an extendable breathing tube at the end of the body that is telescopic. It can get to some of the ones we've got in the jars at the moment about that sort of length. And speaking, this is a larvae that's only probably about that sort of size. And the length of the breathing tube can get to is absolutely insane. But yeah, so they overwinter as larvae, perfectly capable of freezing. Like we got up to the -13 in January up here. So, no, it was December, we were -13. And they all freeze solid and then can completely recover. And it's very weird as a zookeeper thinking, my animals are currently frozen, but they're absolutely fine. It's definitely unusual. But yeah, so they'll then pupate. They go up into a little moss plug at the top to pupate, and then they'll emerge out in May time this year. And so that's what we're looking at is the hoverflies, and they're our sort of primary focus species at the moment. We've got others that we're currently working on, and we'll hopefully be announcing those shortly. And the program is continuously developing, so we've got new species hopefully arriving later this year, but a lot of planning to do in the meantime.
That's really cool, and I mean, it was great. I mean, Highland is a fantastic, and if anyone goes to Scotland, I do urge you to go to Highland because it's a fantastic place to go. It's probably one of the most, it's almost diverse and niche sort of zoos in the UK in terms of that. It's very specialist for Highland and cold sort of tolerant animals and stuff, and you see animals there that you will not see in any other zoo.
No, well, this is the thing. Like we've got limitations up here based on the weather conditions, because like a lot of the species you quite commonly see in zoos won't feasibly survive up here. Like if you brought zebra up here, when it gets down to -13, it's not really going to work. Whereas like the wild horses and bison and polar bears and that sort of thing, absolutely love it. Like we've got some stunning pictures in the last few months of them out in the snow. And unfortunately, yeah, then the same with our species, like overwintering as larvae and then freezing and then emerging out in the summer. And then we're doing all the work with breeding and releasing those. It's been absolutely brilliant.
And that's it. It's the fact that, yeah, the species that you're working with, its natural range is down the road from you.
Yeah, like
you're in the habitat kind of thing where they where they live and where they should be.
Yeah, exactly. So the range for the pine hoverfly used to be, as far as we can understand, much larger, but they've got slowly more and more reduced down. It's the changes in forestry practice that have affected that. So as we've been getting rid of all of the older pine trees, they've not been able to find as many breeding sites. And we've also been clearing out a lot of the rowan initially to make these plantations. And then where we've got such a big deer population, they're then eating all of the new growth that's coming through. But we're fortunate to say the site where the pine hoverfly is still found is about 20 minutes drive from here. And then the release sites that we've been working on are again 20 minutes to half an hour away. So we can actually go out to the release sites and see and monitor these individuals after we've released them, which has been absolutely amazing this year to be able to go out and physically see them and go, okay, these are the individuals we released last year, and we can see what they're doing. Seeing signs of breeding, seeing the adults out is absolutely incredible. We're very fortunate, and we've got a really good relationship with a lot of partners up here, like Forestry and Land Scotland and RSPB and ScotGov and things like that, that will contribute to these programs. And it's a big cooperative effort to conserve these species. And the rare invertebrates and the cairngorms project we feed into that as well as part of the big organisations. So it's absolutely brilliant.
Cool. Cheers, Callum. Feel sad.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Happy ants.
Callum's awesome. So, and that's good. And what's really cool about it is that, yeah, with that species and that the release site is so near, the fact that then you're able to see everything from start to finish, and then even monitor that species in the wild and stuff. Because when you work with the exotics and stuff, they're able to get them back out to the wild. It's very unlikely sometimes as a keeper to be able to go out and see them back in the wild, or even be as part of that release. Go out there with them to release into the wild. Whereas, you're able to obviously see that right through. Able just to go, oh, this is like, pop down there and have a look and stuff. And
well, that's the thing. Like, I had it this year with one of the new species we've got in, we weren't sure what was going to be happening with food plants. So I was like, right, okay, during the flight season, went out and physically had a look. What plants are flowering out there? What's the habitat looking like? What do we think is the ideal? And building up that picture from there, like being able to, as you said, physically go out and see where these are and going to the sites for the hoverflies and being able to go, okay, this is the basis that we're trying to work with, and working with those partners to create that habitat. And then we're able to then also feed that information into what we're doing with our groups at the park. So we're able to then go, okay, right, we can improve it doing this. So we've got all of our facilities and such designed, and we can try and time it up with the wild populations as well as closely as possible. So try and maximize what we're doing and keep it as natural as possible for them.
Yeah, which is awesome. Hey, dads. So, and so, when you mentioned about obviously then with the sort of clearing of rowan and stuff, I think that's something that kind of goes along with a lot of invertebrates, especially native, is sometimes in forests we're too tidy sometimes. And it's something that came years ago. We was both at that same conference. There's a whole talk on dead wood.
Yeah.
Which for most people would be you would have been like, it's going to be a really boring talk on dead wood. And I think both of us were like, that was one of the best talks we'd ever been to, kind of thing, on the use of dead wood and the fact that we too often kind of think that forests need to be this pristine sort of looking thing, like, oh, deadwood doesn't play a role and we get rid of all these dead trees and stuff, and forget that that's a habitat itself.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what so many things rely on. And so,
well, the amount of invertebrate species that feed in fallen deadwoods and standing deadwood as well, and then they'll feed into a lot of the bird life and the mammal life. It's all that, because we need that fresh growth coming through, those mature trees that are then providing that upper canopy, and then the deadwood as well. It's all those stages are needed to feed into that circle that we're trying to create. And yeah, up here is a particular example. Like, a lot of the forest up here is maintained as plantations, which means, all of the old, none of the trees are getting super old because they're being removed for woods beforehand. So then there's not that aging trees that the pine hoverflies in our case need to create those rot holes for them to survive in. And it's not just the pine hoverflies, a lot of other hoverfly species use them. And then, a lot of beetle species and such as well. Like when we're doing the surveys, we're finding beetle larvae digging in and amongst all of them. So it's, and then, just trying to get that regeneration happening, because it's something that does take time to recover again. Like we're artificially making rot holes for the hoverflies at the moment, but it's going to be a good number of years before those trees naturally get old enough that they're going to start doing it. So at the moment, we're having to assist with that with the help of our partners. But hopefully it'll get to the stage where the forests are back to a more naturalistic state.
Yep. But, that's obviously, obviously the end goal, but it's amazing that they're able to create artificial rot holes for them that they're using and stuff. And so at least they've got that chance and stuff. Talking about native species. Scott did ask actually earlier about about endangered species in the UK, and there is we probably couldn't tell you every single one because there's so many and stuff. I mean, there was
it's also difficult because we don't know with a lot of species quite how endangered they are. Like we can see, it's the monitoring that's not necessarily done. Is far easier in a lot of cases to monitor those bigger mammals. It's easier to see them and see those changes in populations. Whereas inverts, you might not, like we'll talk about over the numbers that get as sad as it is, getting squashed on your window screen, and like seeing how many of those have dropped. So it's like all these species we think are so common. What's the situation with them?
Oh yeah, and that's actually quite an easy one to see. They even do surveys of that every now and then, don't they? Where they, you can get a piece of card to basically go over your number plate that's fully legal, and you can still see your number plate.
Yeah.
And then you send that in. They literally count how many inverts have been hit. As we go back, when I was first driving, 10 or so years ago, over, hitting a lot more inverts on my screen. Nowadays, really not that many. Really not that many. Which is actually, that's the sad bit. Is like I should be hitting lots. I should be constantly having to wash my windscreen because of the amount of inverts that have been squashed on it. and you really don't get that nowadays, kind of thing at all. So, but yeah, I was going to say is like with that, obviously, was it in 2019 where it was at the Whipsay conference? Was it they released or naturally released quite a large number of species that they had predicted were going to go extinct in the UK.
Yeah.
And it was like well over 100 species, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, there was a lot of species on there. I haven't got my notes now actually to brush up on it, because there are a number of species already that are being worked on. Like I've already mentioned, the fen raft spiders, ladybird spiders, the tansy beetles. So we're doing work up here with the pine hoverflies, scabious mining bees. Then there's a lot of other solitary bee species that are also struggling. We've done a bit up here on bumblebees as well, that are priority species. So there's quite a lot that are needing assistance, but it's just identifying those and getting the funding and resources together to help with those.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's so many species. It's like looking at what can help the greater amount. Unfortunately, global warming, climate change plays a massive role in so many things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's one beetle that's on Snowdon, isn't it? That's like right up quite high on Snowdon, keeps going more and more up Snowdon as it gets warmer. And it's like, well, eventually it's going to run out of mountain.
Yeah,
so
there's only so high you can get.
It can only go so high before it's just not feasible for that species anymore, unfortunately. And that's the species that's like, are we going to be able to help this species? Because it's so much down to climate change.
Yeah.
So,
that's a tricky one. Like we have to kind of break it down and go, okay, feasibly, is this something we can do something about at the moment with the resources you've got available? Or as brutal as it sounds, you have focus on other species that you can do more for. Because there are others, like we're fortunate with this, with the pine hoverflies and such, we can make artificial troughs for them as they're felling some of the trees to allow more light in, to allow that regeneration to go. That couples in with us because it's making the habitat we need. That all folds in together. But yeah, species in that case, it's very tricky. We can't, as much as we really want to try and push to help cool everything down, and we're trying to get our governments and such to commit to assisting with all that. It's a massive global issue that we can try and push for, but we need to look at it in smaller scale at the moment.
That's it. And again, unfortunately, it all comes down a lot of time to funding as well. And although they don't take as much funding, they also often don't get the funding from so many places because of they're not seen as big, attractive, sexy, romantic sort of animals and stuff. Let's face it, your big megafauna, people, they're gonna always get far more funding for it. And stuff from governments and from general public as well. And stuff for it. I will just answer the question about do coconut hides always go mouldy? So, a lot of them will, but that's all part of the cycle.
Yeah, I've had that before with some of my ones.
If you see any kind of natural decor, especially in stuff that's sort of fairly kind of moist and stuff, it's going to get mouldy, but it's all part of the cycle. So it'll get unmouldy as well. So,
yeah, I've always had it with a couple of spiders that are like, we're going to bury it and then continuously cover it with water by tipping our water bowl over it. And that's how we do it.
Leah's just casually sitting with an OBT on her foot. Fair enough. As you do.
Yeah, I was about to say it yourself. I don't think I'd quite fancy that, but
you're better things have more on my foot than one of my OBTs, but okay.
Orange bitey things are slightly terrifying.
But okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Whichever goes. But yeah, I was just on the topic of like funding and such up here. We're very fortunate that the society itself is very supportive of the invertebrate work that we do, and noticing how big a part of the conservation projects that we can perform. So we've got designated facilities up here, but it's often something that particularly zoos and animal collections don't normally have access to. We've got, say, purpose-built buildings with air conditioning and that sort of thing, which we can use for so many different species and are like purpose designed for it. And we're very, very fortunate with that. And it's meant we could do all the work with things like pine hoverflies and the other species we're looking into at the moment. And it's incredibly fortunate, but those buildings are still expensive, but you can do it in small areas as well. It's just different scale of things. Like it's one thing that a lot of smaller collections do quite a lot with is the native species work.
Oh, but she didn't want to let any more than she wanted to be there, apparently. I'm trying to be thinking how you get an OBT on your foot.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Like that feels like it's effort to get it onto your foot.
Great report. He knows that this is about inverts, but do everything wolves be reintroduced? As an interesting question, Greg.
Yeah, I think I don't know enough about the wolf reintroductions and such, but I think wolves probably is an unlikely one. But there are other species that that are more likely to be. But I think wolves, as nice as it would feel to go back to seeing them in the wild again, I don't know logistically whether that would.
Don't really have enough wilderness to sustain them anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, it's just having them away from or having enough space where they don't clash with people. Like I don't know enough about it, but it would be.
I think there's species that I would rather see the funding go into that are already, they are living in the UK and native to the UK and in vast decline. And so I'd rather see those get helped out than trying to reintroduce one that hasn't been here for so long. Kind of thing. Hey, everyone. As been actually, I found it really annoying that that American company. I don't know if you heard about this. That has got funding. It's like over $200 million to recreate the dodo. Stuff. And just like
as much as there's part of you as the kid inside you going, it would be amazing to see those animals again.
It's not going to be an actual dodo.
Yeah, and also there are species that went extinct not because of what we've done. It's a natural progression as evolution has gone. I always feel like species that we've had a contribution in making extinct, we've got more investment in doing that.
Years as well.
Yeah.
It was like some company got, and they're going to be, trying to get dodos out, basically out of pigeons.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's all like,
it's a pigeon that looks like a
dodo. Sort of thing. It's not going to be, it's not, doing it just for, but unfortunately it gets a lot of funding, that sort of stuff. And then when it's all like, and they will say, it's for conservation, but you're not conserving anything whatsoever by doing that. So
no, it is true. I mean, you'd hope that the technology involved would be able to be utilized to help current species, but I feel like we're almost going in a backwards loop. Like we're focusing on the species at the moment that could do with that work, and then go, okay, actually, yes, this could be used previously. Whereas, I say, the focus is very much on
dodos and mammoths are supposed to be being made, and so like, there's just no. For me, there's just no need for that, and I'd rather see that funding go into species that are in fast decline now that need a help. Whether it be invert or something else, it can be megafauna. The black rhino, the northern white rhino. That was difficult because there's like one. But
it is true, but then you've got the frozen arcs and that sort of thing. So you never say never at that point. But
hey, Russell,
it's been tried.
So, I won't go into. We'll get back onto sort of inverts. That's what.
I know it's so easy to go off on tangents.
Going into things that me and you aren't best versed on. What are some things? Because I think we'll have inverts around us and stuff, and there are endangered native UK inverts all around the UK, but there's also endangered inverts in the US or Northern Europe. Tron, who's watching this from Norway. So, what are some things that perhaps we can, all do ourselves to help our own native invertebrates, whether we've got a garden or we're in a flat without a garden or whatever.
I think some of the things, like especially if you've got a garden and space like that, it's just providing those little niche bits of habitat that a lot of the invertebrates can use and slowly linking it all up. Because we can all do little bits in our little pocket, but if it's able to expand it into another garden, or into a little wild space, it all adds together. But things like creating those dead wood piles, having compost heaps and things like that that allow a lot of invertebrate life to feed on those, planting native flowering plants that, because a lot of the flowering plants we have in our gardens are exotic, whereas actually they're not necessarily ones that our invert life over here can make use of. So looking at what you would normally have and planting more species along that lines, having sort of less manicured lawns and that sort of thing to provide that space, and so that you're not just mowing down everything that they're going to be using. So when you've got a lot of grasshopper species and things like that need the nice tall grass to breed in, and like do their courtship behavior and things like that. It's just almost having that little bit of extra wild, and then working with other people. Because like even if you're in a town or a village, like you've got your little pocket, you can do what you can, but things being able to find that is a bit tricky. So if you can just speak to neighbours and things like that, and slowly link things together, or get, even if it's just a little corner of a garden, it can all make such a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that I speak about here at the park here and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing the weeds. I don't even like using that word really because they're wildflowers, but allowing the weeds to grow. So I think allowing some dandelions, like dandelions. Well, actually, I think dandelions are beautiful, really bright yellow. And we like daffodils, which are bright yellow. So why don't we like dandelions, which are bright yellow? So, and so useful for all the pollinators, as well as the clover flowers and stuff. As thing of like they say, not having like manicured lawns, if you can help it, of having areas where there's various other plants in it and stuff. And what did Bug Life do? The whole no mow May that every May, like encourage people, be lazy, don't mow your garden, don't mow your lawn.
Well, it's things like stinging nettles is always one. As much as they do cause issues when you've got little kids and things like that, there's so many butterfly species that rely on stinging nettles as a food plant for their larvae, that even if you just leave a patch of stinging nettles and just go, okay, right, this is an area that we're just going to leave, and you'll be able to see all the caterpillars and such growing and feeding on that. And even just that little thing can help then branch out into those other areas. Like we're very fortunate here. Say my colleague Carl works on our biodiversity action plan, so we have like an organised plan for our entire site, so we can leave areas that like getting rid of invasive species, planting native species, encouraging that woodland to come through, and it's just doing that sort of thing on a smaller scale that you can do to build it all up, and then seeing all those species then that you get to come in. It's just amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I think we sometimes don't realise just how important the humble stinging nettle is.
Yeah,
and
it's
we love
such a
butterflies.
simple
Most
thing.
people love looking at butterflies and seeing butterflies, in spring and summer, and think they're beautiful. But then we get rid of their caterpillars' food.
Well, it doesn't, like where we've had a few years of butterfly populations being up and down, and then wanting to see those blooms back up again, providing that food plant for them is a basic one. As much as when you're kids, so you always remember coming in after having stung by stinging nettles, but there's really important things. This is true. I've seen less stinging nettles, but I still get attacked by bramble on a weekly basis. As much as I don't work with things that eat bramble anymore, I've still got my sticks, and bramble is still the bane of my life.
Or is this Fanny Stick Set Keeper? Or is
just like no.
Ian's actually just asked about the native fishing spider and where he's got some set levels maybe. Probably think of the fen ras spider, probably Dolomedes.
Yeah, because I know we've got the diving bell spiders and things like that can go underwater, but I'm not sure that they are fishing spider. I'm not familiar with them, to be honest.
I reckon talking about the Dolomedes because referred to like the American Dolomedes as fishing spiders often. So
okay.
So is that what you're thinking of in the Dolomedes, which that's around sort of Norfolk, Suffolk, There's some in Sussex as well,
I
possibly,
believe so.
and then in Wales, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, because it's been a long time since I've read up on the Fenrir
Yeah,
spiders.
it's there. We do have. Yeah, essentially. I'm trying to think about a point where time in terms of extinct animals can be recreated. It is being worked on.
I
Sort of,
think it's
there is.
entirely possible.
Yeah, we got the Frozen Ark projects that are going on. So
Mhm.
collecting DNA from
Yeah.
living animals now to protect that DNA and stuff of that, so we could sort of recreate him, kind of thing. Um,
I mean,
there's also
even like just storing those genetics, as you say, for future,
yeah, for
and then
future
also
use
using
with
it for even populations we've got now, being able to look at different localities to see if there's a difference genetically between those populations and how diverse are these populations that we're working with.
so Grace Williams had a conversation with someone about bats in the UK. All the bats are endangered and lots of work on habitat and stuff, but we need to work on, like you say, the invertebrates for them to eat. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that I say again, kind of in my daily talks that without the invertebrates, we can't have all the animals that we everyone else loves.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
They're the bottom of that food chain, and even a lot of it. Like, I've had it multiple times, even since coming up here. It's like, okay, but why? It's like even at a basic level, these guys are food for a lot of things. Like the adult hoverflies in our case will be getting eaten by birds, other invertebrates, probably small mammals as well. The same with the larvae. It's like even if they're not big ecosystem engineers, they're still providing a valuable resource within that habitat and that environment, which is absolutely pivotal.
So, again, I'm not really a mammal person, and nor is Adam, but so I still think we've gone too far with the otter. There's so many of them now. I don't think there is all that many otters.
I don't know. Like I've seen a few otters back down when I was living down southwards, but I don't know what the current state of the otter population is in the UK. To be honest, it's not one that I've read
I
up
don't
on
really see them
recently.
around here either. We've got mink and stuff around here, which is annoying. I've seen
Yeah,
every now and then we'll get the odd mink on site. It's like, so
I know
indeed
the
around.
population has increased from when we were at one of the conferences, but yeah, I don't know what the current numbers are.
No, I said, yeah, mammal side of things, me and Adam aren't the best people to ask. I don't think on the mammal side sort of fronts. So,
We can make odd bits and pieces, but
not
invertebrates is
bits,
more of our area.
but invertebrates, yeah, invertebrates definitely, and then sort of, yeah, predators and stuff. So, also, what kind of, as I used to work more with exotics, now work with native, what kind of got you interested in the native side of things?
I think, like I say, I started with the exotics and like going into invertebrates in the first place. You can see so much with them, and there's so much still to learn with them. As much as I've really loved working with mammals and birds and everything like that in the past, I think the invertebrate world kind of captured me just because of like there's just so much that we don't know, and you're seeing things that you see that you might not have ever seen before or might not have been described before and things like that. And I think particularly with the native species, sort of seeing how underrepresented and under talked about a lot of native species are, because we've both been guilty of the past, like we've focused a lot on the exotics, and when we think of conservation programs, it's a lot of exotic species and like the parcher in Polynesia and the wolf spiders down in Madeira. But actually, the ones in our back garden are equally as endangered. And seeing the work that you can do with native invertebrates and actually, change the outlook for that species. Like I say, the work the guys have done here with the pine hoverflies has meant that there's been an adult seen last year for the first time in a decade, which is tangible stuff that you can physically see and go, the work that's being done here is contributing to the survival of those species. And it is stuff, we can go and physically see what's going on and you can get involved with, like going out and helping with surveys and butterfly counts and all that sort of stuff, just all feeds into it. And it's so nice being able to see that all meld together and actually being able to physically see it rather than, yes, we're supporting this program out in Africa or wherever, which is still incredibly exciting and valuable work. but being able to tangibly go and see those habitats and what's going on and those
Yeah.
species, and actually go out and survey and see them all, it's incredibly rewarding. And I think for coming up here, getting to see a native species projects and a collection that's focusing quite heavily on the native species projects in the local area was really interesting. It's stuff people haven't really worked with an awful lot before. So it's some really interesting challenges to go, okay, right, we've got this much information, go. Can we work out what we're doing? And fortunately, we're succeeding. And it's just that, yeah, there's so much new information that we're finding out. I think that's what's really like captured it for me. It's like, right, this is the amount of unknown there is and the excitement of trying to discover it. It's like a puzzle.
That's fantastic. Hey, Michael. So,
Hello.
um, yeah, I think for me again, like coming back, an interest in the nose. Obviously, got my own private collection of exotics and stuff, but
Yeah.
I love nothing more than again of it kind of takes back to childhood a little bit of going out and doing a bug
Yeah.
hunt and seeing what native species I can find and stuff. Any kind of sunny day, looking around, even if it, and some of them do look actually really exotic when you sort of look at
Yeah.
them closely and stuff. Things like the tansy beetle.
Yeah.
There's and like it's such a stunning beetle, yet there's only really found in York and not far from Cambridge. So and that's like the only two places that you're gonna find the tansy beetle, and they're stunning. And so
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful little beetles.
and it's on. I need to hope and get back out this year to go back out to the Fender, have a look for some more, and see if I can
Yeah.
find them again and stuff. Because ain't that too far from me and stuff. And with the tansy beetles, it's actually really interesting the fact that the ones up in York and the ones in Cambridge are actually completely different to each other in terms of their behaviour and stuff, and their habits, and even down to their food plants.
Yeah.
They're completely different to each other, and to the point that where it's been theorised. I don't know if anywhere's been done on it, but I know years ago they were talking about it, and like basically whether the ones in the fens in in Cambridgeshire, whether they were actually more related to ones from the Netherlands
Yeah.
rather than the ones from Yorkshire
Mm-hmm.
because of them being so different in terms of behaviour and how they even what they eat and stuff. It's just absolutely sort of mind-boggling that yes, they're the same species, but could actually be very different to each other. Hey, Thomas.
Yeah. And
Hello.
until that initial genetic work is done, it's really tricky to work out where these populations sit. Because at the moment we're getting the Darwin Tree of Life are doing a genetic print for the hoverflies and things like that, and it's like, well, how closely do the Scottish population relate to those populations in Northern Europe, in Sweden, and places like that? And it's like, yeah, how much is that? And then, yeah, we've got these little populations, but there's a geographic barrier. Are they separate subspecies, or and it's just that understanding of how those populations all meld together.
So actually, Chris has put a very good question.
Yeah.
It would take the farming industry to take a big step back from pesticides and go back to more natural forms of fertilizer to help bring back many inverts from the brink. What do you guys think? And yeah,
Yeah.
the, the less chemicals that we can use, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think the one that always, because the pesticides is absolutely huge, like the damage that does, but it's also things like wormers and such. And we've talked about ivermectin in cattle wormers, like for dung beetles, like the negative impact that things like that can have. But simple changes can have such a significant effect on managing that issue. And it's the same with as you say, the pesticides. There are other options that you can use, but we do also understand that there's crisis amount of food, and we've got to produce
it's
food
getting
for
that
people.
balance. It's getting that
Yeah.
balance. I mean, we kind of went too far one way, and I think you know some farmers don't agree with them. They're like, no, we're going to carry on like this. But I think there is a
Yeah.
growing number of farmers that actually see the damage that was done and want to do what they can to help. Well, I said whether
Yeah.
that's replanting hedgerows around rather than planting hedgerows, because actually, what actually helps their fields and
Yeah.
stuff as well. And so like, well, we want to see this, and so as well as you know, it was Dr. Sarah Bain that said about with a lot of people don't realise the UK has native dung beetles.
Yeah.
And they're in vast decline. And they said, ivermectin, which is a wormer commonly used, we use it in zoos.
Mhm.
So, as of, unfortunately, because it's designed to kill invertebrates in the gut, but also then stays in their dung for something like 48 hours or so, or something
Yeah.
like that. It stays in the system, something like that, and it will kill dung beetle larvae. And what she done a study on it. And so, if you worm the cattle on over, because it's a very effective wormer, so you're not necessarily going to tell them don't use this, but actually use it and then keep them on a hard stand for 48 hours and clear up all the dung, then let them back out onto the pasture land. That will actually help the dung beetles. Then the dung beetles will come in, they can feed on the dung, they can bury it under the ground, fertilize the ground to get better grass, you get healthier cows. Fantastic.
It all feeds in together. It's similar with bees and your flowering crop plants, because you can use pesticides to kill off anything that's going to be eating those plants. But if you haven't got the bees and the hoverflies and the beetles, the other pollinating species, they're not, and that having those will increase your crop yield as well. So say that balance between the two is the one that needs to be
and I think that's even suggested that if you'd done that along the line, you would actually have to use less and less and less wormer anyway, because of if he was able to get an increase in native dung beetles doing all this work with burying the dung and doing all this, you'd actually get less worms.
Yeah, because they're clearing that poo up. Because if those eggs are just sat there on the surface, that then infects the cows again. So that's all being efficiently cleared away. As you say, it just
and then
leaves that natural management cycle.
Saving money, actually saving a lot of money. Which is obviously that's music to a lot of people's ears. Normally, it's like, well, if you can save money by doing this, you don't have to worm your cattle as much nowadays because you've got a really good, healthy population of dung beetles on your pasture land. That's actually clearing all your dung away and fertilizing the ground and stuff. That's kind of happy days. And it's been more and more getting onto that and stuff. And obviously there are subsidies for allowing sort of pasture land to go a bit more wild and stuff. And even just re-education for people as well. I was actually listening ages ago, well, it was a while ago. I listened to Jimmy Doherty's podcast. Actually, done a podcast series of it, and he had Dr. Sarah Bain on. Actually, spoke a bit about ragwort and about at his wildlife park and farm. He's actually banned his keepers from removing ragwort from his fields. And so, when it's planted, when it's growing, not really all that toxic, and your grazers don't eat it. They leave it away.
That's the thing they do for the most part, avoid it.
And so he allows it to grow in all his grazers' fields, and that helps one of our, well, in my opinion, one of our most beautiful moths, the cinnabar moth.
Yeah, the cinnabar moths are absolutely stunning. You see so many of them down south.
And just by leaving the ragwort around. Because the caterpillars are stunning, of being bright, sort of yellowy orange and black stripes on them, sort of thing, or barring. And then
they definitely shout, "Don't lick me," as far as caterpillars go, and I'm just like, just no. It's like a lot of caterpillars. It's like, small and green. Oh, that looks kind of cute. And this one, orange and black. Don't touch me.
That's it. That's it. Absolutely. And I was like, very, very cool thing that they actually said. So great to put out here. Very controversial coming, but one simple thing we do is reduce the population of the world by at least 50% very, very quickly. You basically say
it's a very controversial one.
But at the end of the world doesn't need us.
Yeah, I think we get on fairly well without us. But whilst we're here and it's under our tenure, we need to try and support and protect it as much as we can, both for the planet's benefit and ours.
But farmers now leave a bigger margin around their crop fields for wildlife. But it's not too little, too late. I don't think it's ever too little, too late.
It's better to be doing it than not doing it at all. So it's all huge steps
should have been done sooner and stuff. But and there's always more we can do and stuff. But the fact that a lot of farmers are now actively doing stuff, it's still a good thing. So
No, it's definitely an improvement in the right direction. All these small steps, although it's small things, all eventually adds up to a lot,
that's
and
it.
it can help buy that extra time to allow
And I
the
think
measures that we're trying to put in place to take effect.
that's it. And that's something that's really I find really important to actually kind of tell people about when it comes to what we as individuals can do for
Hmm.
any kind of conservation, so
Yeah.
or whatever. It's always seems like what, this is too much of a big thing for us to deal with myself,
Hmm.
but to change too much. And so actually, just do one little thing,
Yeah.
and that can actually make a big difference. Um, as of wherever that is, being a bit lazy in the with your gardening and leaving a few weeds to grow and
Yeah.
something else to grow and stuff, that makes a big difference. Whether it's putting food out for the birds, that makes a big difference.
Hmm.
Whether it's if we go on broad scale with like for exotic stuff with palm oil and stuff, looking at products and going, actually, I'm going to swap this product for this product instead.
Yeah.
That is sustainable.
Hmm.
And so, you know, actually, instead of buying this thing that's wrapped in plastic, I'm going to buy this thing that's not wrapped in plastic, and get
Yeah.
into the habit of that one little thing. Once that's habit, then look at something else, and it's far more important to do a small thing imperfectly than to try and do
Yeah.
everything perfectly, because we're never going to be perfect.
And then it
So
defeats your motivation to then do it. So
that's it.
it's like all these little things add up. And it also then creates a precedent then that you can build on and grow on and try and convince someone else to do it, and then you've made a difference for them as well.
That's
And
it.
then if they then pass it on to one other person, then it all links in together. So it's all little things, yeah, that we can intrinsically do to help with
Yeah.
that. So
So
as much as it
whether
feels
that's
like not a lot, it's still something big, and for ourselves as well, we feel a lot better when we know we've done something to try and help, rather than just looking at it and go, "Oh, there's nothing I can do." Just go, well, this is what I can do, and this is what I'm going to do.
yeah, that's it. And obviously sometimes government does sometimes help. I think the whole charging for carrier bags was a very good thing,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that was a big thing that has made a huge difference.
Hmm.
Sort of thing. That now that most of the time, most of us go around now with a reusable carry bag all the time,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and use those sort of carry bags far less, and so
Hmm.
I mean that was obviously for me that was a very good thing, and even like with the whole now everyone's gone over it. Much as paper straws may annoy people,
Yeah.
probably better just not use a straw. But if you're going to use a straw, paper's definitely better than plastic at the end
Yeah.
of the day, especially when it's just being chucked out. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so I'm all for that. Okay, sometimes I just don't want to use the straw because what's the point? And stuff. But if you're going to use
Yeah.
one, yeah,
Exactly.
use a
Like
big one.
there isn't an awful lot of
Or the fact
difference.
that
You
you
may
can
as well
now
not use it.
buy a metal one nowadays as well. In New Zealand, a lot of people, there's a lot of people that have metal ones.
Hmm.
So
You get the fun collapsible ones as well, so you feel like you've got some crazy piece of technology that just you pop it and just go,
that's it. That's it. It's all these sorts of things. They'll all play into it. It's like another way of and it all helps out everything is when buying like your fruit and veg instead of buying it in that's all in plastic, buy it loose.
yeah.
It's often cheaper as well, so you save a little bit of money.
Yeah, admittedly, the guy in Tesco's this week when I was buying a load of potatoes was like, I could see the look on his face when I just came up with like 8 potatoes. He was just like, okay, right, I've got to weigh this. And then all the carrots and everything. I'm like, right, okay. Sorry, I've got all my random loose veg, but I'm not paying for bags.
Yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, it's one those ones normally taste better anyway because
Hmm.
they're sometimes and yeah, but it's like or if you got a local market or something,
Hmm.
if you can work that into your routine and stuff. Obviously, supermarkets are far more convenient for most people
Yeah.
and stuff. But it's working on choosing. What, I'm not going to buy this bag of
Hmm.
carrots. I only need so many carrots. I'll buy this only that so many that are
Hmm.
loose. So, uh, so it's just what I used to be a cave digger. And pros, I mean, humans may created a bat roost of about 30 or so bats. That's pretty awesome, man. That is
That's
awesome.
amazing.
And that will support a whole host of other species as well. So
Yeah.
you say that supports bats, but they'll support all sorts of inverts as well and stuff because by the bat poo, there'll be inverts that'll come in and eat the bat poo.
Yeah.
Stuff. And then it's all
Entire
creates that whole.
ecosystems that function off of bat poo.
Yeah, no, I've got animals up here that eat it. so, um, so yeah, it's good. So also in conservation, it's might be a bit of a controversial one. Might be more controversial in terms of private keepers. Sometimes private keepers, we sometimes think of, we've got perhaps species that are endangered in the wild, say like Paciferous spiders. A lot of them are endangered and stuff. And you'll sometimes get a lot of people that will say, well, we've got these and unbreed them, therefore I'm part of conservation for this species. What is your take on that?
It's an interesting one because I think particularly in the early, like now, I think as far as like the primary part of conservation goes, animal collections and organized programs is the way forward for sort of actively conserving those species, because like we can do it and have it properly monitored and be recording like the genetics of things, recording all the observations and such we're making. But a lot of the invertebrate species that we've worked with in the past, a lot of the husbandry stuff has come from the private collectors that kept those individuals at first or had expertise with those other species to do things. And like we were saying earlier with the fen raft spider, a lot of that was done in just with dedicated people in their own facilities. So Dungeon Knight's had some incredibly important impacts now. But say as far as like getting out and actually conserving them, I feel like the work we're doing in zoos is that sort of tangible impact. But say keeping those species is still important. And even if it's just from an educational value, to be able to go showing people these are these really cool species, these are endangered. So it's still got use to it, even though those animals aren't going back into the wild. There's still an educational aspect to it, and like it generating that enthusiasm, and then that expertise. I think that's something that's invaluable. Is like, okay, yes, I'm keeping a species, and it's something that then could be used to affect another species or put into a feed into something conservation wise. It's absolutely huge.
Yep. Well, hey, Amy. But in terms of like, because sometimes you get, and it's not just inverts, you get in the reptile sector as well, and stuff where, someone's keeping and perhaps breeding a species completely privately, and they're, selling those into the pet trade and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this is conservation. And for me, that's not conservation.
No,
I mean,
that's the thing. It's like
you
it's
could say
useful.
you're preserving a species or preservating a species. You're preserving it within captivity. But to me, if I was to, like the breed, Posifera metallica or any of the endangered, Pocopherias or where I don't know what else I've got up here that might be endangered in the wild, but the first thing that comes to my head that what I've got that is endangered in the wild and stuff. Me breeding those and then going and send those, to me that's not conservation. Yes, you can say it helps in terms of it means that there's not there's less demand from wild stock.
That is another big point. Yeah.
So so that we're not collecting them from the wild, which we shouldn't be doing anymore, sort of thing with those sort of species. And so, Bill's got a problem is that we don't necessarily know if they're completely pure.
Yeah.
And so, private, certain private ones perhaps couldn't even be in the conservation program because they may not be 100% pure. Without genetic work being done, you wouldn't really know, kind of thing. So my argument is that I can say we help and preserve, and then we can, if we want to help conserve when it comes to a certain species, it'd be actually maybe percentages of takings from selling the young goes into a conservation program, whatever out in the wild that's preserving the habitat or whatever. Then you could say, oh, that's then conservation, and obviously, I'd say sharing your information with other institutions, with zoos and stuff of like, oh, I've done this is how I've done it, kind of thing to deal with perhaps if they're if the zoo's able to actually work with it, that even if it's the same species as a conservation project.
Well, it's like where we've kept exotics over the last few years, and that information that we've gained from having those species is feeding into the work that we're doing as part of the conservation work that we do. So it all feeds in. As much as keeping them as a pet now is not, and breeding them isn't conservation work, it will indirectly feed in certain ways. And there's ways you can do it, but I think now, especially nowadays, dedicated conservation breeding programs are the tangible way of conserving those species, and the way we should be doing it nowadays. Just as the skills and the facilities and such are developed.
Yeah, and Chris, he agrees that a hobby, another hobby is preservation. Conservation would mean lots of introduction, and that's it. It's just because obviously, sometimes the hobby side of things, whether it be inverts, whether it be reptiles, sometimes does get attacked at times, and sometimes that's something that some people that don't necessarily think about it just put out there like, well, I'm going to help them to conserve the species by keeping this, and sort of, no, not quite, and sometimes use that as a justification for keeping it. My justification of keeping these animals is, well, I'm selfish and I like keeping these animals and stuff, and they do a lot for me and stuff.
Yeah.
Whether I do a lot for them is another thing. But at the end of the day, when we it came from another point, this is years ago actually. There might have been a reptile and chill or whatever, and ultimately, if you keep animals, you keep you're keeping them for selfish reasons. You're keeping them for yourself. You're not actually keeping them for the animals' benefit normally. Which was like, actually, what, they got a point there.
That is true.
And so, it was like they said it was kind of controversial them to say, and I was like, no, but what, you might have a point in that one.
Not wrong. That's the thing. It's really interesting to discuss the points. It's the way that we've always been, and it's like, okay, actually, it makes you rethink some of the thoughts you've had in the past, and what is how it all slots together.
So Chris has report. I know dog poo isn't nice, but what happened before poo bags? Did it naturally biodegrade into fields and the land, washed away by rain, but inverts breaking down? Now landfill's full of it. It'd be broken down.
Yeah, I think when it's in much more public spaces, it's not a nice thing to step in. I mean, though for experience, not nice stepping in dog poo, but before that, it would have been cleared up by whoever's around.
Yeah, that's it. When I was a kid and we had the family dog, and so there were certainly certain areas of the garden where it would be like, don't go there because they'll leave the poo there, sort of thing. Until it was no good or whatever. Or they would then just once it had a few weeks and they'd go that horrible white sort of colour and hard and white and stuff, they'd just bury it. Bury it underneath, and they're like, well, no, it'll all go into the ground, and that was off. Why stick it? Why waste money on bags to stick it in a bag and stick it in the bin sort of thing when we can just bury it. As in Jason, poor poo bags hanging in trees. So,
I did think that. I was just like, I've seen way too many of those. I went for a run a few months back up here, and then ran past a tree, and it turned out it just literally just grazed my shoulder as there was a bag in the tree. I was like, why? It didn't get anything on this or anything, but it was just like, why would you just tie it in a tree? Just take it with you.
I mean, that takes more effort than putting it in a bin.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit mad.
If you're going to do that, you would be better off just leaving it, kind of thing, because at least it would have been broken down and put into the ground, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, literally, picking up and sticking in a tree does nothing.
I know. It's you do wonder. Just an extra obstacle for keeping your perceptions about you.
That's it. So then, I'll sort of obviously, some of the things that people can sort of do for conserving our native inverts, or their native inverts in their back gardens and stuff, and just even if they don't have a garden, actually another great thing to do is to go around litter picking everything and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your space. You can, or even just approaching local authorities and going, yeah, can we just set up a little bug hotel or wood piles and things like that, even if it's not your space or you're living in an area which, yeah, you don't have access to that. And then even things like window boxes and all that sort of stuff. It's all little things, but it all feeds into that
I mean,
bigger
something
picture.
I like to do because I keep beetles, so I do go out and I'll collect leaf mulch and rotten wood and stuff. But whilst I'm doing, I kind of do sometimes feel guilty that I'm obviously taken away from that natural habitat. So my form of repayment to that natural habitat is I also take a bin bag to collect rubbish
Yeah.
and stuff at the same time. So sort of thing. Um, and so any rubbish I see around, I mean, let's say either put on some gloves or get a litter picker. They're really cheap. You can get them for like £1 or whatever
Yeah.
for a litter picker. So because do you want to be a bit careful? You don't really want to pick up litter with your bare hands because you don't know what's on it sometimes.
No, or where it's been or what. Yeah.
And stuff. So get a litter picker or find out. Yes, you can use disposable gloves, but then you're adding more rubbish.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer a litter picker. And so and actually makes again that kind of makes me feel better. I'm like, oh, I've done something for the environment, and it's that little thing.
Yeah.
And so when I've gone out and collected leaf mulch, rotten wood, moss and stuff, I'm like, I've got this, but I've also got a bag of rubbish.
Yeah.
The thing that I've then cleared this, and it's taken me the same amount of time as it would do. It doesn't take me any longer,
Yeah.
sort of thing. I've had a nice walk. I've had this and the other, and it's actually does for me it gives me a nice real sense of like this is nice and stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to see that all feeding in, and then yeah, it's just a small thing, but say it all adds up. That's one less bag of rubbish that's out in the world now, and it's just little bits and pieces, as you say.
Oh, um, and you as well as working with the natives and other part of your job, you also do privately keep a few species.
Yeah, I keep significantly less than I used to, but I still got a few things privately.
So, what sort of things are you keeping privately?
So at the moment, say it's dropped down quite a lot. I've got a couple of rainbow stag beetles, the Maluri.
Nice.
So I've got a pair at the moment. I haven't seen anything of them for a while, but I don't want to keep digging them up and annoying them. The male gets very sassy with me every time I find him, so he gets very annoyed, and then he's just like, "Leave me alone." So they're quite good fun. I've got peppered roaches.
Nice.
The
The
tessellata.
tessellata.
So yeah, absolutely stunning little guys. And they're loving being in the nice warm room now because they're just absolutely charging around like headless chickens, and just like you can just hear them all rustle away, just like, oh no, he's come in, he's seen us. So it's got them. I've still got some of the giant Ugandan flower beetles, the Ugandensis.
Nice.
I've got a Pocothera regalis, a little curly hair, red rump tarantula. What else we got? The giant African land snails. I've still got a few of the marginata. And then, yeah, I've got the little log sticks as well. So I think that's everyone. I think it's about 8 species I've got now, plus the tortoise. I know he's not an invertebrate, but he's also part of the little collection of minions.
It's part of the family.
He is part of the family. He is very sassy. It's every time I have people round, he's just like, nope, I'm coming out now. So then he's charging around the floor, and it's don't step on the tortoise, please, because he's under your feet. So yeah, it's significantly less than I used to have animals wise. I think at one point when I was back at home, we were back at Shepworth, I had about 80, 90 species.
Yeah,
So
you very much kind of took out. I mean, well, your mum blames me a lot for.
oh, that was so funny. Yeah, it definitely took us down a dark rabbit hole, but I very much appreciate it. Opened my eyes to this crazy world.
That I may have kind of brainwashed you into inverse, where you completely ran and ran with it and doing some awesome things that I absolutely admire and stuff. And
I'm very fortunate with where I am at the moment. I've managed to get into a collection that does a lot of invertebrate work, and I'm working with some very interesting species. And so I am very very fortunate with it. and I've got a very supportive team that's able to help us with it as well, which is steadily expanding, which is incredibly exciting. So yeah, no, but I've definitely gone hard down the invert route. I never would have imagined when I first started out working down specifically with native invertebrates, as much as it was like a little interest. I was always thinking, oh yeah, we're working with the big fluffy stuff. So now we work with the little fluffy stuff.
But you sometimes don't necessarily know going into zookeeping.
Mm-hmm.
What species really you want to work with.
Yeah.
So, some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
I always knew that I always wanted to work with reptiles, amphibians, inverts, and that's what I do. So, but certainly a lot of people, when they think of zookeeping, they do think of, I want to work with the big cats, or I want to work with the big hoofstock, or I want to work with this kind of thing. And they, don't necessarily always think about LVI. So, and so part of my job sometimes trying to get people interested in it. Sometimes there's this option as well. Kind of thing like, yeah, they're amazing, but look at this and look what you can do with these, and look at the sheer variety that you could, potentially work with and stuff.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, it's so exciting just sort of bringing people round, and the number of people that have come around both facilities here and previous roles as well, and just gone, what we've talked about here is completely not what I expected, but it's absolutely incredible. It's like people just don't necessarily understand and know about these groups or understand them well enough, but that understanding opens your mind to so much that you can learn about, and just like that intrigue that comes from it. So it's just brilliant what you can build up from all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the thing, like anyone who's that's thinking or looking at becoming a zookeeper or looking at working, if you're not, there's always be open to other species and other completely different taxonomic groups and stuff.
100%. Like,
learn about.
I'm very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much like at the moment, I'm focusing on the inverts, but I'm still more than happy to go and help with other species as well. Like, again, very fortunate up here, like end up doing work with like markhors or sort of mountain goats and the wild horses and things like that, and getting to go and see those other species. It's just incredibly interesting and rewarding. As much as the focus and interest at the moment is with those natives and the extensive work we're doing with those, there's still so many other animals out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I do a little bit with the capybaras here. Almost on a daily basis, I'm doing a capybara experience, but that's a bit of time where it's all like, I'm out of my dark little cupboard kind of thing.
Yeah.
Going with the inverts, and I get sometimes they'll be called up to help with some tiger training or stuff, and so it gives you that little bit of a difference. You learn about other species and stuff. But people that perhaps and like looking into keeping in this case, keep your mind open to across the taxa, because the animals kind of choose you in a way.
Yeah.
And you go, there might be something that you never ever thought about, or thing that you never thought you'd be interested in. And then suddenly you're like, actually, these really intrigue me, and this is what I want to work with. I mean, I know a lot of, private keepers of inverts and reptiles that do not work with inverts and reptiles in zoos.
No.
Some work with other species instead. And one, because they get burnt out otherwise, sort of thing. That certainly does happen quite a lot. I have seen where they will say like, I'm working with these at work, and then I'm working with these in my home as well and stuff. And they kind of start getting that sort of mental battle with it. That's why, like, for me, one of my rules is whatever I have up here, I don't have at work.
Yeah.
I don't have the same species twice, because that's just otherwise. What am I doing that for? Kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you go home, then you do another 4 hours of animal stuff, then you go to bed, and then you go up and do it at work in the morning. As much as you love them all to pieces, it is a lot to manage.
It's a lot of work. I mean, I certainly have days, where I'll do a full day, 7-8 hours of work, working with inverts and come up here and do another 3 to 4 hours of work with inverts on the things on the back. As a, and it is completely it is a labour of love and stuff. The moment it becomes a chore is the moment that I would give up most of the inverts that are in my private collection more than my job is more important to me.
Yeah,
and
it's
I would
that finite
easily
balance.
Yeah, because I do have a lot of species. I've got a lot up here. I'd be like, well, no, just let's cut down. Or I've cut down on some things. I cut down on my phasmids, so because they were becoming a pain, and they were starting to stress me out and stuff. Mainly because I had about 2,000 budwing stick insects, and that was insane.
Yeah, I remember that tank.
Stuff, and I recognised that what it was doing, and I think it's important for anyone doing that, especially with zookeeping and stuff. If you're working with animals as your day job as well as your hobby, stuff to recognise burnout and to recognise that actually this needs to change. This one thing needs to change for the best.
It's partially for you and then partially for the animals you're looking after. Because if you're burning out, you're not doing what you should be doing to give them the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to say that that I don't like budwing stick insects or the other stick insects that I used to keep. Absolutely doing one day I might have them again and stuff. But currently they don't fit in with what I can do and what I can provide at the moment.
Yeah, so I have to admit, as far as stick insects up here, finding blooming bramble. If I had species that ate raspberry, it'd be great. But the ones I've got at the moment just eat bramble, and there's very few patches of just standard bramble up here. I go down south and I'm like, oh, it was so easy to find bramble down here. I'm just like, raspberry is just everywhere.
It's for that I live, breathe, sleep with inverts. I absolutely do. Absolutely do. Constantly. And it's always much the same as well.
Yeah, I do spend quite a lot of time doing invert-related shenanigans. I mean, with work and then at home as well, and then you're doing moth surveys at 6 in the morning and all that sort of stuff. It's just like, but you love it, so you can't not do it. It's amazing. But I'll just quickly say, Harry commented earlier saying what tortoise species, and he's a little Herman's tortoise. So I suppose I was just like, I need to remember to go back. So yeah, he's my little dude. I've had him for 19 years now. So yeah, I love him to pieces. He's currently in my fridge in hibernation, so he's in sleepy mode. He's very annoyed at me because I took him out to weigh him today.
Oh dear. I mean, you'd be annoyed if someone wake you up just to weigh you.
Yeah, but he hasn't lost any weight, so I'm happy.
So, are you off, Ian? Cheers for joining.
Yeah, Adrian.
So, another aspect of invertebrate conservation is field work.
Yeah.
And stuff. What are the sort of field work things that you've sort of done? Because you got, there's surveys. That's probably the bulk of a lot of field work. Often it's a lot of surveying.
Yeah, surveying is a big part. So my role is focused around the sort of captive husbandry side of things, but I'm very fortunate I can also be involved with a lot of the fieldwork stuff. So in relation to the pine hoverflies, most of the field work is organised by their Invertebrates in the Cairngorms project, and they're run through the RSPB. But we provide our time and resource as well to help with those. So we go out and we do surveys for the actual hoverflies themselves. We go out and we help with the troughs and the checking of those. We're also then going out on doing the releases as well. So we literally go round. So we had hundreds of troughs this year that we went round and we physically checked all of them to see if there was larvae this year, and then actually noting down the different species we were finding. So it wasn't just the pine hoverfly we were finding. There's other species as well. So although they weren't being used for our species, they were still providing a useful habitat for other things. So fortunate to get to go out and do the surveys with that, getting to go out and do the releases. We also do quite a lot on site as well as far as field work goes. So we go out and we do surveys for small scabious mining bee. It's a critically endangered solitary bee species that we're fortunate enough to have a population of on site at the wildlife park. But then we're also doing like planting flowers, devil's bit scabious flowers for them. So we're doing a bit of restoration work. So it's primarily Carl, my colleague, who does the biodiversity action plan stuff. But I also try and help out wherever I can with that. The other bits I've got involved with this year is, say, moth surveys. So I'm very fortunate. I've got a big RSPB reserve just out, literally out the back of my house. So I went out with the reserve manager a couple of times this last year now, and was doing moth surveys, which was incredibly interesting. Very early starts in the morning, and late night setting up traps. But it was incredible to be able to see those variety of species, because we were finding 25, 30 species each trap we were doing. Some of which you don't really see that much down south. We found beautiful emerald moths, and the coolest one was a poplar hawk moth. Literally just ginormous moth, but looked like a giant teddy bear. It was adorable. So yeah, we get. I'm very fortunate. I get to do a reasonable amount of field work as part of my role. Sort of helping out as much as I can. I've done a few sort of bee walks and surveys as well. That's more of in personal time. So I've been very fortunate to be able to get involved with all of that. Particularly with the hoverflies, getting to see them going in, seeing them in the wild is huge.
Night, John. Cheers, buddy. Cheers for that. Cheers for joining. We'll highlight that as he's done a super chat.
Has done super chat. I was just like that. I was just like, oh, super chat.
So, yeah, and these are things that people that aren't involved in conservation, in our daily lives can get involved with. There's normally whether it be natural history societies in your local area, stuff. Do you go? If you do a Google search for your local area natural history society, most places have one, and they are fantastic resources when it comes to native invert stuff. Sometimes I have a little program or whether it be talks going on or game any kind of surveys going on and stuff that you might be able to get involved with and stuff, as well as get organisations like the RSPB doing they'll do various things like that as well. And so they can be real great fun to go out onto. And they'll open your eyes to a whole new sort of world that perhaps you didn't realise was on your own doorstep. Eventually.
Well, as you say, there's a lot of others as well, like butterfly conservation quite often do different talks and courses, bumblebee conservation, bug life. They're all organisations that all meld together, but they all do some incredible work. And then, they do days where they're going out and surveying and are after extra pairs of hands, or just keeping an eye out for certain priority species that they're wanting to spot. Because, those records that people can provide, that just us putting in those records and going, I've got images of this, I found it here, is this useful? And quite often it all feeds into a database that then can give us a better picture, because there's only, as much as we're fortunate enough to work in conservation such, there's only so many places you can be. So the more pairs of hands and pairs of eyes you've got, the more data you then get.
Is a massive resource. Citizen science. That's where you got, obviously like butterfly conservation do the big butterfly count every year. Which is like one of the largest surveys of basically anything. I think in the world potentially as well. Like because so many people take part in the big butterfly count, and it's fantastic citizen science of where then the people at butterfly conservation can look at everyone's report, what they've recorded down and go on and map out everything and see what what trends there are and stuff. With it, I will just say, with going out and doing surveys, sometimes the weather is not on your side. Sometimes in the UK, sometimes because these things have to be organised in advance and stuff, and on for certain days, and sometimes you've got to work. with other organisations, and so I know when I'd done like Tansy Beetle survey, at the time it for sort of times where we weren't going to sort of disturb ground nesting birds. That's not really something we want to be doing,
Yeah.
And the day we went out, we was mainly looking for food plants and not necessarily the beetles. So surveying for the food plants to see where particular, potentially their habitat could be. And it was good. It was really just looking for the food plants because we turned the day we had, and a whole team of us sort of turned up from various places and stuff. It was one of the rainiest, windiest days we could have chosen, which for tansy beetles is the worst weather because they hate wind and hate rain.
Yeah.
Managed to find 2 beetles. Actually found 2 beetles.
That's saying something given the conditions.
Given the condition, and literally the guy in charge of the whole project and stuff was like, well, we're definitely not going to find any beetles today, but good job, we're really here just to find
wrong.
Prove them wrong. So I found 2. And had it confirmed that they were tansy beetles.
Yeah.
So it was all like, well done. I mean, I was given, or the area I was sort of serving was called the tansy beetle hotspot. So it was like, they're going to be found anywhere, it's going to be found there, kind of thing. And they wanted the whole, as much of the area as possible. So it was just kind of luck that, on that day, we managed to find 2. So it was 2 more than we expected to. So happy days.
It's always a win if you find 2. If you find more than you thought.
That's it. And I think the most that had been recorded at the site was like 20 beetles.
Yeah.
So we found 2 out of the 20 beetles there, which is actually a fairly high number. Really, got a good percentage. So, but
we've all had days like that where we've been sat in a field surveying for something and it's peeing it down with rain or snowing or something like that.
You come back drenched. You're soaked to the bone. But you actually still potentially had a really good day.
Well, you're still getting out and seeing these individuals in the wild or seeing the habitat. And because we just love doing it, me and my boss Helen were sat last year surveying for hoverflies in absolute pouring rain, being bitten alive by midges. But when you then find one of those hoverflies that you'd released the year before and just go, this is one of the individuals that we've released. And that then spikes you up again. And you just go, actually, it is worth it. As much as I'm getting eaten alive and various other bits, I'm seeing this and it's just so incredible to see. We've all had that situation, but then when you get that little spark.
Yeah, and that's something all it takes, that little tiny spark and stuff. So, and again, we've got some great apps like was iRecord and stuff.
Yeah, iRecord, iNaturalist is another one.
Stuff where iNaturalist is also a great one as well, and stuff where again, encourage people to take photos of wildlife that you see, especially inverts, and record. Put it up on iRecord and stuff, especially and iNaturalist, especially if you're not entirely sure what it is, because someone else will actually look at that and go, "Oh, it is most probably this," another thing, and then record that as being in the area. And that's one reason I think we now know that actually, again, not far from here, actually, the Perseverance spider has been found just outside Cambridge.
Yeah, I've heard about
that. Which is fantastic because it's such a rare spider in the UK. Didn't think it was around Cambridge, and it's been found just outside Cambridge.
Yeah.
The local media did, run a story of, oh my god, wild tarantulas in Cambridge, which is not correct.
No.
They're sort of like, I wish you had rang up someone about that instead. But at the same time, I know what the press are like, and they probably would have.
Yeah, it is a battle.
I would have said. So, but there were some headlines going around of like, wild tarantulas in Cambridge. It's like, no. The Perseverance spiders and megalomorphs.
And the native species just be happy that we found them.
And so, but unfortunately, that is a case of unfortunately, especially with spider work. I know, going back, defending RAS spiders, Wanzi that was, I won't name the zoo, but Wanzi that was involved with the project and stuff. That pretty recent, their local press decided to run a horrible news story about them being like they releases these horrible giant spiders into the wild, as if it was a horrible thing that they were doing. It's like they're doing conservation work.
Yeah,
Literally,
it's a
like
species that's
you
meant
should
to
be
be
celebrating this
there.
and stuff. And they're like, "Oh, it's gonna, invade your home and kill your children." So they're not, they're not
Yeah.
gonna. Like the zoo is not even anywhere near their habitat. Thing that they're being released into and stuff. And even if it was, they still wouldn't do that.
It's definitely part of
So,
breaking through that stigma surrounding invertebrates, and certain groups of invertebrates probably more than others. But
yeah,
and sort of going, actually, these species are incredibly cool animals, and they're not going to, as you say, invade your homes and run up your leg and bite your children, that sort of thing. Like they're meant to be there, and they'll be incredibly useful to have, and you'll be able to see them, and they don't want to interact with us.
no,
Like
no,
we're the ones that are invading their space, so we've got to find ways of getting alongside all these species, and it's just, yeah, it often gets blown out of proportion, particularly in some of the media stuff. But then there have been other articles that have been really positive towards invertebrate stuff as well.
yep,
So it goes into complete swings and roundabouts, but hopefully it will start slowly edging more towards the positivity rather than the negative sort of some press around them. I think particularly spiders, with a lot of people being arachnophobic, things like that. They're one that is particularly common. Um, for ones, I always remember at one of the places I worked before, there was a lady with her daughter, and she was trying to walk through the invert house, and you could see she was absolutely terrified. But her daughter was super excited to see all the bugs. So I went and I showed her a few of the spiders, and Mum came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you. I really don't want to pass on the discomfort that I have for spiders to her. She got it. She sort of almost inherited it from her mother, being terrified of spiders. She was like, I don't want my daughter to feel like that. So she was quite grateful.
fantastic. That
Daughter
to
was like,
recognise.
oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So it's lovely to see that interaction from her, and just like, yeah,
Yeah, and that's good that that parent that she recognised that her fear was a learned fear, learned behaviour, and didn't want to pass that on. So
yeah,
hats off to her, of like you know, at least being willing and not wanting to show that kind of fear to
yeah,
yeah. So that's actually fantastic. Um, we'll just answer this one, Harry. There are, but they're not native, and they shouldn't be
yeah.
there. um, there's also
Sliders and that
go
sort of thing
on
are quite common.
with turtles because they cause quite a bit of damage where they have been released. Although I want to say that they've been mentioned every now and then on projects to bring the European pond turtle
Hmm.
back to the UK
Yeah,
kind of thing, but I think well, we've got too many non-native American turtles wild in the UK as it is, sort of thing that we need to sort of get rid of first.
yeah, that's the thing. There's still quite a lot around, isn't there? Like I know a number of zoos have that, where they've been in sort of waterways throughout the sites, just where they've either been released over the years or previous display species, and yeah, so there aren't any currently native, but
That's it. Um, yeah, and unfortunately, in some ways, the ban on those species didn't necessarily help because it just encouraged more people just to dump them a little
yeah,
bit.
sadly it did. Yeah,
Although you do now have, I want to say it's Lincolnshire Wildlife Park now has what's called the National Turtle Sanctuary there now. That will
hmm,
take in all those like basically all those turtles and stuff, and
yeah,
it's secure enclosures sort of thing. So at least they can sort of live out their life and stuff, and not do any damage to native areas. Sort of thing.
yeah.
People
Now having those
have
designated
that.
areas, because otherwise they just get dumped on doorsteps, particularly for zoos. It's just like,
Yep.
yeah, cool, here's a turtle, go. And it's like, well, we don't
And
necessarily
we
have the
can't really do
space
much
to
with
do
it.
it,
Unfortunately.
or it's a quarantine biosecurity issue for the endangered species they've got on site.
Yep.
So it's a tricky balance to find, but then rescue centres are so stretched as well. So
That's
having
it.
those space, like I'd love to have all of the tortoises and turtles, but don't
Hey,
currently have
Chaz.
the space.
That's it. And actually, bring up good point. Actually, we didn't touch on is biosecurity,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to endangered species.
Yeah.
and working with endangered species. Like some of the species that you work with, certainly in the past,
Mhm.
I've had to have some real sort of heavy biosecurity
Yeah.
measures put in place, and sometimes certainly when you go to private, don't necessarily know what biosecurity is. It's a word that kind of gets burst around,
Yeah.
but not everyone understands what biosecurity is. But what are some of the measures you've had to make with just some of the species that you've worked with over the years?
Yeah, so I've had it sort of both ways. There have been some species that I've worked with that you're trying to protect from pathogens or bacteria or whatever coming into those populations, and some that have certain conditions that you don't want to spread to the rest of your groups. So it goes both ways on the biosecurity stuff, particularly with things like the partula snails. So some things we had to do with those is you had to wear separate sets of gloves with all of them to make sure you weren't putting any contaminants in. If you'd had extensive contact with any other snails within the collection, you weren't allowed to do any routines with those snails because you've been contaminated at that point. They had their own designated equipment, which was only used for them. It wasn't allowed to be used for anyone else. It was all routinely cleaned and disinfected to make sure you're not passing anything in between. Like good cleanliness within collections is really important anyway. But when it is those species where you've got a good chunk of the population, you don't want the last thing you want is for a pathogen to get in from a native species or a non-native species, whichever way around you're looking, that they've got no immunity to, and just rips through your population because that it feels devastating when something like that can happen. So having to, with some species, you're having to get fully changed into completely fresh sets of gear. So fresh uniforms. Like I've worked with a lot of amphibian species.
Yeah,
Like yeah, having designated biosecure areas where everything that's going into there is cleaned and filtered, fresh uniform on, doing the routines with them first in the day, so you've not had contact with any other animals, just to try and protect those individuals as much as physically possible from any kind of pathogen or invading or pathogen or anything like that. So like up here, we disinfect down all of our buildings in between species and life stages, just to try and keep everything as clean as possible. Because there are potentially issues with things like fungal outbreaks and things like that you want to try and minimize. So I've had to do quite a few things. Like we're all quite familiar now with it with bird flu and things like that, of keeping your birds under cover, and foot dips and all that sort of thing to help just all those little measures that, although how small they are, could make a significant difference when you've got such pivotal populations that you're working with.
yeah, that's it. And also like the biosecurity measures also does occasionally come down to even live food sources for
Mm-hmm.
predatory species
Yeah.
and stuff, where your live food comes from, or perhaps breeding live food just for those
Yeah.
individual species, perhaps in that room
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Yeah, we had to do
Sometimes,
that in the past.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
I'm good.
doing all the food prep in there, or even to the stage where all of the substrate that has to go in is sterilized, whether that be going through the freezer or being baked beforehand, so that you know you're not introducing any invasive species into there. And then, yeah, like you say, all of the live food going in, rearing it up specifically, so you know what's been fed to it, and like those generations. It's a lot of resources to go into it, but it's so important to keep those populations protected because one little lapse can cause such significant issues, particularly with invertebrates, because something gets in and it rips through those populations so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and then if you're working with, again, like I said, some species where you've potentially got half of the world's entire population of
Mhm.
the animal, the last thing you want is anything getting in there to
Yeah.
wipe those out,
Hmm.
because you don't want to be the one responsible for losing half of the world's population of a species
Yeah,
and stuff,
exactly.
which is
Um,
I can imagine being in some ways quite stressful. Other thing
it
to think
is
about,
it
like
is stressful, but
at
it's
the same
also
time, if
incredibly
you got
exciting.
the infrastructure in place and the
Mhm.
routines in place,
Yeah.
isn't then almost second nature at the same time as well.
Yeah, it's a negligible issue if you're doing everything right, but you just have to try and maximize things. But I know talking to the guys up here, when they first got those hoverflies in, and they only got a handful, it's like, right, okay, so we're working with potentially the last of the Scottish population here, trying to maintain and manage those guys in such a protected way to try and boost it up. Once you've got a good number and you've got through a few years, you get a bit more confident with it and your procedures get better. But yeah, that's stress of okay, you've not got that many. Let's we've got to build it up from here,
That's
and
it.
one
Yeah.
small slip. So the biosecurity is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think particularly like when we talk about amphibians with chytrid and that sort of thing is massively important, and a lot of the snail species as well are quite commonly it's a massively under threat group of invertebrates and can be so easily affected by. I know with parcher, particularly parasites, can go back and forth with them. And then, yeah, if you get like phorids and all that sort of stuff in there, there's a lot of damage that can be
Horrifies
caused.
are just they're the, I think they're the bane of every invert keeper's life. Is if you get
They
forest.
really are. Like the moment they get in, getting them out of the population. I mean, with a lot of stuff, drying them out was the easiest way of helping to manage phorids. Can't really do that with a lot of snails.
No,
So
no.
that doesn't really work. So it was an interesting challenge, but like different levels of biosecurity is just really interesting to see, and it's come a long way from what it used to be. Because usually, yeah, we'll chuck them all in there, whereas now having designated facilities with like wipe down walls, mesh on the windows so that things can't come in and out when you've got the windows open, meshing extractor fans, things like that. It's all like little measures, but it makes such a huge
Yeah,
difference to be able to wash everything down, clean everything properly, particularly in between species and things like that when you've got such key species you need to work with.
absolutely. So we've just gone past 10 to 10. So we'll probably be
Oh
cutting the
yeah,
stream
it is.
around sort of 10.
Yeah, no, sounds good to me.
We've gone for nearly 2 hours, and it's kind of flown by.
When you're talking about inverts, it's always good.
That's it. That's it. So I was going to say, yeah, anyone in chat's got questions to fire them out and Steve has actually come up with,
Yeah.
are there any invasive invertebrates in the UK? And there are loads.
Yeah, there is quite a few, I think. Yeah,
So,
it's both ones that have been
thank
like,
cheers for joining. So, we've got so many. I mean, one of the biggest one is harlequin ladybirds.
yeah, Harlequin ladybirds. There's a few I think there's a few scorpion species on the south coast now that have been
Scorpions,
inspections.
Sheppey Island and stuff. Yeah,
But yeah, the Harlequin ladybirds is probably the most well-known one because yeah, we see all of the seven spots, that sort of thing, as the natives. But some species are coming over sort of as natural moving across now. Other things have been purposefully released. Like there's a few stick insect species as well, isn't there, around southern central England?
Around Cornwall. In Cornwall, there's a few species of stick insects that are wild, and they're probably from people dumping eggs or whatever. They've become kind of naturalized down there. But we've also got the Spanish slug.
Yeah.
Obviously one of the big ones that we're every year sort of looking out for. I don't think it's been spotted yet. Is the Asian hornet?
Yeah, Asian hornet. Yeah.
I don't think that's in the UK yet, but there's always
no. It's very much being kept an eye out for by beekeepers. Like the moment you mention hornets, they're immediately like, right, okay, what is it? Because remember that down south, trying to sort of spotting those. And then what was it? There was a moth species in around London. Was it post moth caterpillar? I'm trying to remember. There was a caterpillar species that was been introduced, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
But yeah, there's absolutely there's probably too many for us to think about of non-native. Another non-native one is the noble false widow Cetodon nobilis. Technically not native, but has been here like over 100 years. So
yeah, that's to a point where it's fine. It's knowing.
And we do have native false widows as well.
Yeah,
which a lot of people don't often realise.
So, I love false widows. Remember, we used to get black widows in occasionally, and it was just like, cool, right? Cool. Interesting challenge working with them.
But yeah, you know, and visually, if you see a spider, the chance are it's a native spider because a lot of people don't realize we have like was it over 650 species of native spider
I think
in
it's
the
more
UK.
than that now.
I was
But
gonna
yeah,
more than that.
I'm trying to remember in the book that I've got, but then it's been updated since then with more, and I think it was about 650 there. So I think it might be more than that now. But there are so many species, and trying to identify some of them is tricky as. It's like, okay,
Oh,
going
yeah,
through and like, right, how can you tell the difference between these two? You need an electron microscope. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And
Like,
that's actually kind of the point.
absolutely amazing.
One of the point thing is that you can't always and actually often can't ID something based on a photograph.
Oh yeah, even having them physically in your possession can be tricky enough. But yeah, trying with a
Yeah,
photograph. There's some species you're just like, yep, cool, very
yeah,
distinctive, you can do. But others have sat there for 2 hours trying to work out what it was and not been able to narrow it down to more than like even a genus and go, okay, right, it's something within that group. But
and this is it. And yeah, as it sounds like takes an electron microscope to look at it, or even some species you got to dissect them to look at things inside to actually differentiate between
yeah.
species and stuff. Where it just becomes far sort of too difficult.
Well, even like where we do the work at the wildlife park with the scabious mining bees, there's other bee species that are found in the same habitat that nest in a very similar way,
Yeah,
but just a very subtle difference. And trying to actually spot them, like you go around and you start seeing things, just like, oh, is that? No, it isn't. Oh, no, no, it isn't. Because there's so many different species around, which has been really interesting to see. Try to sort of get you practicing IDing different bee species.
yeah, definitely. Which is why then, when you go with like a natural history society, like the fact that some of us can literally they've been doing it so long and know their stuff so well that they can just a hoverfly flies past them and it goes that's da da da, and you're like what?
Yeah,
They just know it straight away, and they're often correct as well. But it's
it's
because they've been doing it
it's
for
incredible knowledge basis that you've got there of people that can just, as you say, spot things like that, but often are focused on that very small group of individuals for a large chunk of their career.
yeah,
Like people that I know say that do the mothers, and it's like, yep, I haven't even touched the little macro moths. I just do the larger moth species, and it's just absolutely mad, but
yeah.
incredibly interesting.
That's it. So yeah, sees where he wants to plant up his gardens, help invert. So I'm not gonna
Yeah,
have any lawn, and I'm going to just try and leave it to native plants. Which
yeah,
fantastic.
that'd be brilliant. I'm
So
looking
no,
at that like I've got in the house up here. Like I'm upstairs in a block of a building. I'm like, right, okay, I'm going to get my window boxes done and all this, and just all the little things. I'm going to start slowly taking over other people's gardens. But again, very fortunate that I've got a site that we can do quite a lot on, so we can be building bug hotels and all that sort of stuff to support all of that. And all the team's very keen on it, which is brilliant.
Mike, Craig, cheers for joining it.
Right, Craig.
So, anyone got any last questions for Adam before we close down for tonight?
Yeah, so hopefully, so I'll come back once we've got our new projects all sorted and planned out. Hopefully, be able to talk a little bit more about some of the other stuff that we're doing up here as well. So yeah, in a little bit more detail.
So, it'd be great to have you. On again to do some updates on
Hmm.
projects that you're currently working on, and then new ones that come out, come up
Yeah.
and stuff, and how it all progresses and stuff. Because it's something
Hmm.
that again, the hobby side of things don't, just general public, we
Yeah.
don't always hear about invert conservation projects going on in zoos.
Yeah,
So
no, that's the
stuff like
thing, and it's a lot that's being done more and more now. So now we're planning to build up more and more. I'm still quite in the grand scheme of things. I'm still quite new to the facilities up here and the projects. Like my colleagues are a lot more familiar with it. But hopefully over the next year or so, we'll be seeing and finding out so much more about all of it. And yeah, being able to talk to everyone about it is incredibly exciting. Yeah, it's just more people to talk about the amazingness that is the invertebrates
that's it, and
and the conservation you can do with them.
yeah, and getting out there on obviously it's something that we spoke about back in 2019. The chair of Tracy gave kind of call out times of like, we work with all these amazing inverts and stuff, but yet public tend not to know about them and stuff. And I we out there, and obviously, colleague of ours at another collection, he said that he kept being told that he's too scientific and stuff. Yeah. Which is a real sort of shame. And it's trying to get that balance of like, because you do look at, the majority of social media, it's always going to be mammal centric, and then sometimes some birds, and then potentially reptiles, and yes, if we don't do a lot of invert posts or reptile posts, and some of that sound to me because I sometimes don't, I don't send the pictures out or whatever, or don't have time to take sometimes a picture of them or whatever. So, but when you do, you don't, it doesn't get that interaction with the public. It doesn't get all that traction on our social media pages yet. Yeah, put out some photo of capybaras or red pandas or tigers, and bang, it's got hundreds of views, likes, whatever. This or the other, and then they're like, well, but and you see it, any of the zoos that are working with some really critically endangered inverts, whether it be the likes of London or Marble or Chester or wherever, and if they do an invert post, there'll be so much so little interaction with that, and yet they'll put sometimes perhaps a very silly post about one of the animals, bang, loads. It's just sort of like, it's always that thing of like, hopefully it's getting better. I mean,
it definitely is.
There's more and more people getting interested in inverts, I think, nowadays. So, certainly from a private point of view, I think the private hobby of invert keeping certainly has grown.
Yeah.
In my view, I mean, there's talk about shows. I think kind of just invert only shows this year. There's like 16 in the UK.
Wow, that's nuts.
Like, so it's like
it's definitely building.
It's definitely grown.
I know. I still think back, like at my previous job, one of the highlights I had was a little bit. Ended up being sort of an inadvertent competition. We did a Star Wars Day post, and what we'd done is we made Baby Yoda out of melon and kiwi.
Yes.
And put it up in our beetle enclosure, and then got loads of other pictures with like BB-8s and that sort of thing. And we got more interactions than the Kias got with cardboard lightsabers. And I was just like, yes, do the thing. As much as Kias are awesome, I love them to pieces. But inside, I was just like, yes, the inverts did a thing.
I remember you doing that, and I was like, "That's genius!" And I need to remember that to
try and me and our intern had a great time
myself, and to try and do something similar myself.
I don't know how I'll get a Star Wars Day plan in with this one. I'll have to see. Just got a little hoverfly with a little lightsaber. The guys were laughing at me earlier last week because I'm making shaders to go at the top of the enclosures to provide the hoverflies with a little sort of place to shelter away from the sun, from the light of the lamps if they want to. And the guys thought when I was in the morning meeting that I said I'm making shades for the hoverflies. And I was like, yeah, I'm just cutting out tiny little glasses for the hoverflies. It's really awkward because I don't have ears. There's nothing to purchase it onto.
But they started to worry about you, Adam. Were they still like, hang on,
everyone always worries about me, so it wasn't anything new. But yeah, I said to them I'll carry on working on it. But I've got a lot to get ready before the flight season this year. So I think shades is lower on the priority list than getting all of our enclosures set up, ready to go. But I will work on it. I will try and have feedback for it. It was just very funny.
No. So Jazz has asked if you can do that. Feel free to.
Phil, you're a fruity knob. I didn't see that. I was just like, hang on a minute. And I feel like there's a previous story to this, but I imagine we won't get too far into it.
I'm not quite sure where the same word comes from. It's normally fruity beard.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So,
there you go. Just call him a fruity beard knob.
Normally, but there we go. And see, so it's good because you're passionate about inverts, and we love talking and learning about them.
No, I'm so happy to be able to talk to everyone, Steve. It's absolutely brilliant to speak to like-minded people about all of the invertebrate stuff. It's so nice to see everyone being so positive about it. And hopefully we can carry on building our little invert empires and how important they are.
Night, Jackie. Cheers for joining it. See thinks Chaz has had a shandy.
Okie dokie.
That might explain it.
I mean, it's a Monday night. I mean, there's of course there's got to be shandies involved. I'm here on my cream soda. I'm being boring because I'm working this week.
I'm on the water.
Yeah, I'm just like it's a Monday. I've got to
back to
concentrate.
work tomorrow and stuff. So it's all like in that. Yeah. That's it. Right then. Well, it has gone 10 now. So yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll start wrapping up. So yeah, it's been great having you on again, Adam.
No, thanks for having us, Phil. So anytime you want to chat invert stuff, I'm more than up for it.
Yeah, have to have them again. Yeah, when you're able to give some updates and stuff, and yeah, I mean some projects you're working on, and like I say, yeah, anything new that comes out and stuff would be fantastic because yeah, stuff that we don't always get to hear about. So,
yeah, no, it sounds good. So hopefully a little bit later this year we'll have some more updates on some of the new projects we're working on. So yeah, I'll try and come on and a bit more information on the hoverfly stuff. And then yeah, some more into some of the other species we're starting to work with now. So yeah, more than happy to come back and do more chats about that sort of thing. So yeah, it would be really happy to come back.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, everyone who's watched, thanks for watching, especially if you've been watching since the beginning. So thanks for the guys who done super chat. So it was like Callum and Trond. Cheers to Craig who gifted a channel membership that went to Jackie. So I've got my next video is coming out on Wednesday, which is a rehousing video of 2 Kidarakis. So yeah, that might be interesting.
I'm sure he's fine.
So 2 Kidaraki spiders rehousings. Then was it Saturday is the Great Ant exhibition up in Sheffield. I'll be there. Leah will be there. A few of us will be there. And stuff on Saturday. Steve W just gifted a membership as well.
Oh, brilliant!
Which has gone to Aaron Moon. There we go. So that's 2 memberships that's been gifted tonight.
Amazing, perfect. I was just going to say, if anyone has any questions or things like that, just drop the message over to Phil and he can pass anything on to us if I can help out with it. So, yeah, if we've got any questions, just let us know.
And then, next week, in terms of stream-wise, next Monday, all being well, I'm hoping to have another Adam on, but this time Adam of Micro Exotics.
Been replaced. No.
Talk about all things isopod.
Ooh, isopod fun.
Yep.
Do love an isopod.
Exactly. I found some brand new baby lemon blue Gabaris today. Like little tiny babies. Like yes, more babies. They're so bright yellow.
Yes, okay, out.
So yeah, all being well, that'll be next week's stream is with Adam Webb of Micro Exotics. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you again on
everyone.
the next one. Okay. Right.